Good morning, students. Next topic under microbes and human welfare chapter is biogas. Okay, what is biogas? Biogas is a mixture of inflammable gases which are produced by microbial activity. Okay, what are biogas? What is a biogas? It is a mixture of inflammable gases. Okay, so when we say biogas, they are the mixture of different inflammable means which can be burnt, which can be flamed. Okay, so they are the mixture of inflammable gases. When I say mixture of gases, there should be more than one gas, right? So here the mixture of gases are carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. Okay, so biogas is a mixture of inflammable gases. That means they are mixture of gases which can be flamed or inflamed. So here the gases are carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. Okay. Now why do we call them as biogas? Because they are the gas produced by living organisms. When I say living organisms, specifically we are talking about microorganisms. So mixture of inflammable gases produced by microbes and they are used as fuel. Okay, so we can use the biogas as fuel. Just like a LPG, this biogas can also be used as fuel. Okay, the difference is here there will be mixture of gases like carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. Methane is a major component of biogas. Okay, and they are produced by microorganisms. That is the reason this biogas is included under this chapter, microbes in human welfare. That is, this gas is produced by microorganisms and this gas is useful to human beings. Okay. Now, how microorganisms produce biogas and which is that specific microorganism which produces biogas? Biogas are generally produced by specific type of bacteria known as anaerobic bacteria. Okay. So biogas is generally produced by this group of bacteria known as anaerobic bacteria. So what is anaerobic bacteria? The bacteria which actually grows in the absence of oxygen are known as anaerobic bacteria. The bacteria which grow in the absence of oxygen are known as anaerobic bacteria. Okay. Now, anaerobic bacteria is a broad level of classification. Under this anaerobic bacteria, since this biogas carries major amount of methane, the anaerobic bacteria which specifically produces this biogas are known as methanogens. That means methane generating bacteria. Okay, so this is the broad level of classification. We generally say only anaerobic bacteria, that means the bacteria which grow in the absence of oxygen, only they will be able to produce biogas. This is a broad classification. Under this, specifically, since these bacteria produce methane, which is a major component of biogas, the bacteria which produces methane are known as methanogens. Okay, this is also a broad level of classification. We can take particular example for this methanogens. For example, there is a bacteria specific bacteria known as Methanobacterium. There is a particular bacteria known as Methanobacterium. This is the example of for bacteria. These are general naming for the group of bacteria. Okay, so methanogens mean anaerobic bacteria refers to all the bacteria which actually grow in the absence of oxygen. Whereas methanogens are group of bacteria which actually produce methane. Okay, the example for methanogens are Methanobacterium. This is a name of a particular bacteria. Okay, so where do we find this Methanobacterium? This Methanobacterium will be generally found in the rumen of cattle. Rumen of cattle. What is rumen? We all know cattle or cow, they are known as ruminants. Why are they known as ruminants generally? Because in the stomach of cow there are 4 chambers. Okay, the cow's stomach has 4 chambers. The first chamber of cow's stomach is known as rumen. Because of the presence of rumen, which can store a large amount of food in it, because of the presence of this rumen, cattle are generally known as ruminants. Okay, so rumen is the first chamber of cow's stomach. Okay, so rumen is the first chamber of cow's stomach. Because of the presence of rumen, this generally cows and generally the cattle are referred as ruminants. Okay, now this rumen of cattle generally carries this bacterium known as Methanobacteria. Okay, so rumen of cattle, that is the chamber of the first chamber of the stomach of this particular cattle or cow, generally carries this bacterium Methanobacterium. Okay, why do they carry Methanobacterium? What is the function of Methanobacterium in cow's stomach? Okay, we all know cow, generally cattle, their main food is grass. Also they eat a lot of other plants, generally the leaves of the plants. And we all know this grass and all the leaves of the plants, they carry the cell wall material known as cellulose. Okay, we all know that in all the green plants, the cell wall is made up of cellulose. Okay, so cattle generally they eat grass and any other green plants. Okay, when they eat grass and any other green plants, generally these grass and the green plants are rich in cellulose because all the cell walls are made up of cellulose, the cell wall material known as cellulose. Now the cellulose cannot be digested with the normal enzymes. Okay, so in order to digest this enzyme, they have a particular type of bacterium in their stomach known as Methanobacterium. Okay, so what Methanobacterium does to the cellulose is, Methanobacterium will act on the cellulose. They will convert the cellulose into carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. Ultimately, Methanobacterium is the bacterium which helps in the complete digestion of cellulose in a cow's stomach. Okay, hope this is clear to you. So, what is a biogas? Biogas is a mixture of many inflammable gases, which are they carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. Now, how are they produced? They are produced by microbes and they will be used as fuel. Now, which microbe actually produces biogas? The bacteria known as anaerobic bacteria. The anaerobic bacteria are the bacteria which grow in the absence of oxygen. Now, this is a broader classification, general classification. Under this anaerobic bacteria, there are particular type of bacteria known as methanogens who actually produce methane. Example for methanogens is a bacteria known as methanobacterium. What is the speciality of this methanobacterium? Methanobacterium has the capacity to convert cellulose present in plant cell wall into carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane, the combination of which is known as biogas. Okay. So this methanobacterium has the capacity to generally digest cellulose. So the cow, the stomach of cow carries this bacterium known as methanobacterium, where in the rumen. Rumen is the first chamber of cow's stomach. Okay. So when the cow eats this grass and green plants, the cellulose present in this will be digested by this bacterium known as methanobacterium. Okay. Now, when the cow produce cow dung, or any cattle, not only cow, when the cattle produce cow, the cow produce cow dung, it is rich in methanobacterium. Okay, the cow dung will be rich in methanobacterium. Okay, because the methanobacterium which is present in the rumen get mixed with the cow dung, and when it is excreted from the cow's body, it carries a lot of methanobacterium in it. This is the only reason cow dung is generally used for the production of biogas. Okay, when we produce biogas in a separate biogas plant or biogas unit, the major raw material that we use in biogas production is cow dung, because cow dung carries a lot of methanobacterium which will be present in the cow's stomach. Okay, so when the cow dung is excreted, it carries a lot of methanobacterium. Okay, now we will see how actually biogas plant work or a biogas unit works. Okay, and what is the setup of a biogas unit. Let's look into the biogas unit. Okay, what is the structure of a typical biogas unit? Here you can see a setup where we have four different types of tanks. Okay, here the larger one you see here. Okay, this is the largest tank known as digester tank. Okay, this is the place where we will add all our bio waste, that means the waste coming from biological source. Okay, we will add all the bio waste here. This is known as digester tank. Okay, so connected to this digester tank we have a mixing tank. Here you see this is known as mixing tank. Okay, now here you see one more tank which is known as outlet tank. Okay, this tank is known as outlet tank. And you see here the last type of tank which is known as gas holder tank. This is the gas holder tank. This is the digester tank, this is the mixing tank, this is gas holder tank, and this is the outlet tank. Okay, this unit, the structure of this biogas unit is very important. Also it is very simple to study. Okay, this is generally asked for 5 marks in your examination. Okay, let's see how this biogas unit works. Here I have told you this tank is known as digester tank. In this digester tank we generally put all our bio waste. Okay, and this tank is connected to the next tank. Okay, here there is a connective tube where whatever you add here can be sent to this digester tank. This is the place, this is the tank where we add slurry. Okay, what is a slurry? When cow dung is mixed with water, that mixture is known as slurry. Okay, so I have written here slurry. So when we mix cow dung with water, it is known as slurry. We add that slurry in this part, in this tank. which is known as mixing tank. Since we mix cow dung with water, we call them as mixing tank. This tank is mixing tank. What we add here? We add the mixture of cow dung and water, which makes slurry. Okay. So through this pipe, we will send this slurry to the digester tank. I hope you all know why we use cow dung in the biogas unit, because cow dung carries a lot of methanobacterium. Methanobacterium is a bacteria which can convert cellulosic material into biogas. Okay. Now here in this digester tank we will add bio-waste, and this is the place where all the spent slurry will be removed. Okay, first initially we will add slurry through this tube, through this pipe to this digester tank. Once all the digestion is taken place and the biogas has been released, whatever waste is remaining here, that is known as sludge. Okay, while talking about sewage treatment plant, we have come across this term known as sludge. Sludge is a actual waste which is left over after all the whole process of sewage treatment is done. Here also, once the biogas is produced, all the waste that is remaining is known as sludge. Okay, that sludge will be collected here. Okay, and the sludge will be removed with the help of this particular pipe. Okay, and the waste or sludge will be collected here, which will be waste, which will be actually thrown, or it can also be used as compost. Okay, the sludge or the spent slurry or the waste that is obtained after the production of biogas, that particular waste is known as sludge. That sludge can be used as compost. Okay, it can be used for agricultural purpose. And this is the last tank, which is known as gas holder tank. Okay, this tank is known as gas holder tank. Whatever the biogas is produced in this digester tank, that will be collected in this gas holder tank. Okay, you are adding all the bio waste, slurry, everything here, and ultimately what is going to be produced in this unit? Biogas is going to be produced in this unit. That biogas will escape into this gas holder tank, which is placed above the digester tank. Once the biogas is released to the gas holder tank, it will be taken through this outlet, which is known as biogas outlet. Okay, it will be passed through this outlet. Okay, and it will be connected to your household as it will be used as a fuel. Okay, it can be connected to a pipe and it can be connected to your kitchen. Okay, so this is the setup of a biogas unit. So here you have slurry. How it functions, let's see now. Here you mix cow dung with water and you send it to the digester tank, which is present here. In the digester tank you will add all the bio waste. Okay, when cow dung and water comes in, the cow dung carries a lot of methanobacterium in it. That methanobacterium will work on the bio waste which is present in the digester tank. Okay, when the bio waste is degraded or digested completely, okay, that is the reason we call it as digester tank. The biogas will be completely digested by the methanobacterium. Okay, ultimately this methanobacterium will digest the bio waste and release the biogas, mixture of carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. It will be released to this gas holder tank. Okay, so all the digestion will be done here, where the cow dung and the water comes in the form of slurry. Cow dung carries a lot of methanobacterium. Okay, from here we send cow dung mixed with water to this digester tank. The cow dung carries a lot of methanobacterium. It will digest all the bio waste which is present here. Bio waste is a waste coming from biological source, right? So it carries a lot of cellulose. So that cellulose will be acted upon by this methanobacterium, and the cellulose will be converted into carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide and methane. And that mixture of gases will pass through this gas holder tank. It will be collected here initially and it will pass through this outlet and it can be connected to your kitchen, okay, or wherever you want to use this biogas as a fuel. Okay, ultimately whatever waste is remained here, it is of no use. It will be collected through this pipe in in this particular outlet tank, and then waste is known as sludge. It can be taken from here and it can be put it in your agricultural field. It can be used as compost. So this is ultimately how a biogas unit works. It's very simple. The diagram is also very simple. However, it is a very important question for your 5 marks. So if we are looking into this, yes. Here I forgot to mention one point. This tank will be usually present 10 to 15 feet below the ground level. Okay, this tank is a very large tank. It will be present 10 to 15 feet below the ground level. If you want to read this, how biogas is produced, or generally we also call it as gobar gas. Okay, gobar is nothing but cow dung. Okay, here we can see the mechanism of biogas production step by step. The raw material for biogas production is excreta of cattle, which is dung. Dung means cow dung. The biogas plant has a concrete tank of 10 to 15 feet deep in which bio-waste and slurry of dung is collected. I have already told you that is this tank, digestive tank, that is made up of concrete. It is a cement tank which will be present 10 to 15 below the ground level. And what we add here? We add here bio-waste and slurry of dung. Okay. The third is the tank has a floating cover which rises on production of gas in the tank. Now, how will we get to know that in this digester tank or the digestion is completed and biogas is being produced? You have added bio-waste here, you have added slurry here. When will we get to know that biogas is being produced? Okay, generally people what they do is, when they add bio-waste, when they add slurry, they will add a sheet of plastic sheet over the over the material which is present in the digester tank, over the bio-waste and the slurry. Actually what happens when the gas is released, the cover starts floating, it starts raising. Okay, that's the reason we call it as a floating cover. We generally put a cover on top of this, in the digester tank, on top of the bio-waste. Okay, when the gas starts producing, the cover will start rising. Okay, only once the cover starts rising, we will get to know that the production of gas has started. Okay, this is not mandatory. Okay, this is not a mandatory step. Without the floating cover also, the biogas unit can function. The only reason why we are using floating cover is just to know what time, at which particular point the biogas has been, started to produce. The tank has a floating cover which rises on production of gas in the tank. Methanobacterium in the dung act on the bio-waste to produce biogas. I have already told you the methanobacterium which will be present in the dung. Okay, it will act on the bio-waste to produce biogas. Now the gas produced is supplied to the nearby houses by an outlet. This is the outlet. Okay, the biogas that has been obtained, it can be supplied to different houses. Through another outlet, the spent slurry is removed to use as fertilizer. This is what I am saying. This is the spent slurry. Spent slurry means the slurry which has been spent or used. That's what we mean by this term spent slurry. The slurry which has been used here is known as spent slurry, and whatever waste is remaining, we can use it as fertilizer. Biogas is used as fuel for cooking and lighting. Biogas can be used for both purposes. One is cooking and another purpose is lighting the house. So this is the biogas unit. I hope this biogas production and the biogas unit structure is clear to you. Let's move on to the next topic, where we will study how microbes are useful to us as biocontrol agents. Okay, how microorganisms are used as biocontrol agent. First, let's see what is a biocontrol. Biocontrol refers to the use of biological methods for controlling plant diseases and pests. Okay, now there are plenty of pathogens which will attack plants, and they cause a lot of diseases. There are thousands and lakhs of bacteria and viruses, generally microorganisms, which cause multiple diseases in living organisms like human beings or any other animals. Similar way, there are multiple microorganisms or multiple pests. Okay, pests, when we say, the larger organisms which causes diseases in plants. Okay, now how to get rid of this plant diseases and pests? In order to control these pests and in order to avoid diseases to the plants, we sometimes use microorganisms. Okay, so such process is known as at that particular point, these microorganisms are known as biocontrol agents. When microorganisms kill these particular pests which causes plant diseases, such particular microorganisms are known as biocontrol agents. Okay, biocontrol refers to the use of biological methods for controlling plant diseases and pests. Okay, here we are talking about microbes as biocontrol agents. However, what is biocontrol? You are biologically controlling a particular disease. How to biologically control? Generally, if a plant is having a disease, we generally what is the procedure used by us in order to get rid of the disease? We generally spray pesticides, insecticides. Okay, we generally use chemicals to protect the plant from any kind of disease. In place of using the pesticides and insecticides, if we start using biological methods to treat the disease, then that becomes biocontrol method. Okay, here in this topic, since we are talking about how microbes are useful to human beings, we will study how microorganisms are helpful in controlling the plant diseases and controlling plenty of pests. Okay, now why biological methods? Why can't we use chemical methods? Okay, chemical methods method is when a plant is facing any kind of disease, just spraying some chemicals on the plant so that the plant will recover from that particular disease. Why can't we use it? Why can't we use the chemical method? Why can't we use chemical insecticides and pesticides? See here, effects of using chemicals like insecticide and pesticide to control disease and pests are, okay, what are the effects if we are using chemicals like insecticide and pesticide to control diseases and pests? Okay, there are certain harmful effects if we use chemicals. Okay, which are they? These chemicals are toxic and extremely harmful to human beings and animals. Okay, when we are using chemical insecticide and chemical pesticides, they are extremely toxic and they are extremely harmful to human beings and animals. Now imagine a plant has been attacked by a pest and plant has developed a particular disease. Now what you will do, you will spray some chemicals like insecticides and pesticides. Okay, when you spray pesticides, what happens is, pesticide is a toxic, right? It's a chemical which you are spraying on the plant. The plant, if it is used for as a food, then what happens is, this chemical which has been sprayed on the plant will be consumed by you. Okay, your body is going to receive those particular chemicals and ultimately that chemical will have adverse effect on your body. Okay, that is the reason we have to avoid these chemical insecticides and pesticides. Okay, insecticides are the chemicals which will kill insects, and pesticides are chemicals which will kill particular pests. Okay, so when we use this insecticides and pesticides, they are harmful to human beings and animals. Because if you are throwing this if you are spraying this insecticide and pesticide on any particular plant, and you are consuming it, or if any other animal is coming and consuming it, definitely that chemical will have adverse effect on the body. Polluting our environment, fruits and vegetables. When you use insecticides and pesticides, or when you use chemicals, it will pollute our environment. It will spoil the fruits. It will pollute the fruits and also vegetables. If a plant is having a particular disease, you spray these insecticides and pesticides, you are going to pollute the environment. Okay, how? You will pollute the soil, because if that insecticides and pesticides are falling on the soil, it will pollute the soil. Groundwater, when it is raining, this insecticides and pesticides will mix with the rainwater. Ultimately, it reaches the groundwater. It will pollute the groundwater. Okay, if the fruits and vegetables from the same plant is consumed by us, then it is going to harm our health also. Soil is polluted through use of weedicides used to remove weeds. Okay, there are particular type of chemicals known as weedicides. They are, their target is the weeds which grow along with the other crops. Okay, there will be some unwanted plants growing along with your plant of importance. Such unwanted plants are known as weedicides. When you spray, such plants are known as weeds. Okay, the chemicals that are used in order to kill the weeds are known as weedicides. Okay, the weeds are unwanted plants that grow along with your natural crop. Okay, in order to kill these weeds, we spray these chemicals known as weedicides. When we spray more and more weedicides, that chemical is going to pollute our soil. Okay, so that is the reason. These are the harmful effects of using chemicals as insecticides and pesticides. To get rid of insects and pests, if we use these chemicals, what are the ill effects that we will be facing? So, what to do? How to get rid of the insects and pests? If we use microorganisms, then we can get rid of insects and pests naturally. So that becomes a biocontrol agent. Now, how microorganisms will help in controlling the pests and controlling the disease? Biological control of pests and diseases. Okay. Here, use of biocontrol measures will greatly reduce our dependence on toxic chemicals and pesticides. I have already mentioned, in place of using chemical pesticides, if we start using biological methods to control the pests and diseases, then it is going to reduce our dependence on the chemicals, and it will keep our environment and also our body safe. So let's look into some biological control, how to control the pests and diseases. Now there is a insect known as ladybird, and there are some insects known as dragonflies. Okay, ladybirds and dragonflies, you are very much familiar with these insects. They will be used to get rid of aphids. Aphids are small bugs which drinks the sap of any particular plant. When they start drinking the sap of the plant, the growth of the plant is affected. And mosquitoes, as you all know. Okay, generally what happens is this ladybird eats these aphids. Ladybird is not harmful to any particular plant. In turn, what they will do, this ladybird will eat these aphids which are actually drinking the plant sap and affecting the plant growth. These dragonflies, you might have seen, dragonflies, they usually eat mosquitoes. Okay, so that there are no diseases and there are no, we can get rid of these pests naturally, biologically. Okay, Then there is this bacteria which is a very important bacteria known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, there is a bacteria known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, it is generally used in biotechnological experiments. Okay, this bacteria is used to control butterfly caterpillars. Okay, before reaching the adult stage of butterfly goes through different stages, right? One of the stages is caterpillar stage, which is also known as larva stage. From egg, in the life cycle, if you look into the life cycle of butterfly, it starts its life as an egg. From egg it develops into larvae, which is nothing but caterpillar stage. From larvae it goes to the pupa stage. From pupa stage it reaches the adult butterfly stage. Okay. Now this caterpillar or larva stage of butterfly is little problematic because they eat most of the plants. Okay, they generally feed on the leaves and they eat of the whole leaf. So in order to get rid of this larva or the caterpillars, we use this bacteria known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, how do we use it? We use dried spores of Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, bacteria in its life cycle, when there is adverse environmental condition, that means the environmental condition which is not favorable or which is not good for the bacterial growth, at such particular time the bacteria produces some structures known as spores. Okay, in adverse environmental conditions, bacteria produces certain particular structures known as spores. Okay, these spores of Bacillus thuringiensis is also a bacteria. It also produces spores. Okay, so spores are taken from this Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, so we will be taking spores from this Bacillus thuringiensis. It will be dried and it will be available in the market for selling. Okay, for sale it will be available in the market. Farmers, what they do generally is, if they are tired or if their agricultural crop is being affected by this caterpillar of the butterfly, then what they do is they get this dried spores of Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis is abbreviated as BT. Okay, BT. You might have heard of BT cotton, right? So that BT is nothing but Bacillus thuringiensis. So this Bacillus thuringiensis bacteria will produce spores. It will be available in the dried spore form in the market. So this dried spores of Bacillus thuringiensis will be brought by the farmer. It will be mixed with water and it will be sprayed on plants which are attacked by these caterpillars. Okay. Now what happens is, when the farmer mixes the spores of this Bacillus thuringiensis with water and he sprays it on the agricultural crop where caterpillars are affecting it. The caterpillars, while eating the leaves, they will accidentally eat these bacterial spores also. Okay, along with the leaves, when they are eating leaves, they will eat these bacterial spores, the dried spores which have been sprayed on the plants. The spores will be eaten. The spores, when they reach the gut of the larva or gut of the caterpillar, that is nothing but the digestive tract. The digestive tract of the caterpillar, when the toxin reaches there, when the spore reaches there, it releases a toxin, okay, which is a poison or a chemical. This toxin will kill the larvae or the caterpillar. Okay, hope this is clear to you. Imagine a plant is affected by butterfly caterpillar where the caterpillar is eating all the leaves of this particular plant. Then the farmer will go to the market and he will bring the dried spore of Bacillus thuringiensis. The Bacillus thuringiensis, the spore form of Bacillus thuringiensis is very dangerous because it will be mixed with water and sprayed on the plant. When these spores enter the gut of the caterpillar, it will release a particular toxin and it will kill the particular caterpillar. Here I have mentioned it will kill the larvae. Larvae and caterpillars are the same. The caterpillar stage of butterfly and moth are generally, the larvae stage of butterfly and moth are generally referred as caterpillar. Okay. Now, dried spores of Bt are mixed with water and sprayed on plants where these are eaten by the insect larvae. Okay. In the gut of the larvae, the toxin is released and the larvae gets killed. Okay. So that's all about how Bacillus thuringiensis bacteria is helpful as biocontrol agent. Next we will move on to another type of fungus known as Trichoderma. Okay, this fungus is also useful in controlling several plant pathogens. The Trichoderma is a fungus which is generally soil borne. They will be generally present in the soil. Okay, since they are present in soil, they will be able to kill many plant pathogens. Okay. Now next type of microorganism which are helpful in as biocontrol agent is baculovirus. They are specific group of virus belonging to the genus Nucleopolyhedrovirus. Okay, baculovirus are viruses which belong to the genus Nucleopolyhedrovirus. Okay, what they do is they generally attack insects and other arthropods. Okay, they generally attack this particular phylum arthropods. Okay, by affecting which are affecting the plants or which are attacking the plants. These viruses are excellent candidates for species specific narrow spectrum insecticidal application. Species specific, this baculovirus is species specific. That means it is targeted to only one particular species. If it has to kill a moth, it will kill only that particular moth. It will not kill any other moth, or it will not harm any other plants, mammals, birds, fish, etc. Okay, it is very target specific. Here you can see narrow spectrum insecticidal application. If we are using baculovirus in order to kill one particular type of insect, then the baculovirus is having narrow spectrum insecticidal application. That means its target is very narrow. If it is meant to kill one particular insect, it will kill only that particular insect. It will not target any other insect or any other plant or any animal or any particular fish, birds, any other animals generally. Okay, so that is narrow spectrum insecticidal application. That means its target is very specific, very narrow. It kills only the target, not any other particular organisms. That means they do not harm plants, mammals, birds, fish, etc. This is very useful in integrated pest management program. Integrated pest management is the management of pests. Okay, so this is how biological control of pest and disease can be done, and how microorganisms are specifically helpful in controlling the pest and diseases. Okay, so let's move on to the last topic of this chapter, which is microorganisms are used as biofertilizers. Microbes as biofertilizers. You know there are so many chemical fertilizers available in the market. However, there are so many microorganisms which act as fertilizers. If microorganisms are acting as fertilizers, then that particular fertilizer is known as biofertilizer. Any fertilizer which is of a biological source. Fertilizers are nothing but any particular chemicals which will enrich or which will increase the nutrient quality or the fertility of the soil. If these fertilizers are of biological source, then we call it as biofertilizers. So when some organisms increase the nutrient quality of the soil, we call it as biofertilizer. Which are the main biofertilizers? important biofertilizers are bacteria, fungi and cyanobacteria. Okay, now we will see how bacteria act as biofertilizers. You might have heard of this bacteria known as rhizobium. It is generally, in your school days also you have studied, there will be certain type of bacteria which will get inside the root of a plant, forming root nodules. Okay, such bacteria are known as symbiotic bacteria. Symbiotic bacteria are bacteria where the bacteria gets into the root of a particular plant. Okay, especially it is done with legume plants. Okay, you know what are legume plants. For example, we can take our Mimosa pudica or touch-me-not plant. Okay, if you look into the root of this touch-me-not plants or Mimosa pudica, the root will be having small nodules throughout it. Okay, if you get that root, cut it open, stain it and observe it under microscope, you will be able to find this bacteria called as rhizobium in that particular root nodes. Okay, why did this bacteria enter into the root of that particular legume plant or Mimosa pudica? Okay, so when this bacteria enters the root of this particular plant, there will be small nodes. Okay, that is known as root nodules. Okay, you have observed it in your school itself. So when the bacteria enters the root of this particular legume plants, what happens? They form small nodes, throughout the root. So these small nodes are known as root nodules. If you cut it open, you will find rhizobium bacterium inside it. Okay, why did rhizobium bacteria enter into the root? Okay, so the reason is the rhizobium bacteria will enter the root nodules of legumes and it will fix the atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, it will fix the atmospheric nitrogen. What is fixing atmospheric nitrogen? We all know in the atmosphere there will be nitrogen in the form of molecular nitrogen. Okay, in the atmosphere we will find this gas known as atmospheric nitrogen. Atmospheric nitrogen cannot be directly taken by the plants for its growth. Okay, somebody has to provide this nitrogen to the plants. So who will do it? This bacteria known as rhizobium. It will convert the atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia. This process is known as nitrogen fixation. Fixing atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, fix atmospheric nitrogen. Fixing atmospheric nitrogen means conversion of molecular nitrogen into ammonia. Molecular nitrogen will be present in the atmosphere. It will be converted into ammonia. Then this ammonia can be taken up by the plants for its growth. Okay. Now that activity is done by this bacteria known as rhizobium. Rhizobium is a symbiotic bacteria. When we say symbiotic, it is in close association with one more particular organism. That is called a symbiotic, which form root nodules in legumes. Legumes are particular type of plants. For example, your Mimosa pudica, and fix atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, they will fix atmospheric nitrogen. They will convert the molecular nitrogen in the atmosphere into ammonia. Azospirillum and Azotobacter, free living bacteria, fix atmospheric nitrogen and thus increasing nitrogen content of the soil. See, there are three different types of bacteria that have been mentioned here. This is rhizobium, this is Azospirillum, Azotobacter. The speciality of rhizobium is that rhizobium gets into the root of a particular plant and fix the nitrogen. Whereas Azospirillum and Azotobacter, these two are again bacteria which will convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia. However, they will not enter the root of any plant. They will be living freely in the soil. Hope this is clear to you. This is symbiotic bacteria. That means they will go in association with the root nodules. Whereas these two bacteria, they are free living. They will be living freely in the soil. However, they will fix the atmospheric nitrogen. ultimately they will increase nitrogen content of the soil. You know, nitrogen is one of the major, or we can say they are the macronutrients which are helpful for the growth of the bacteria. Okay, so this is all about bacteria, how bacteria acts as biofertilizers. Next we will see how fungi acts as biofertilizers. Okay, mycorrhiza. Myco means fungus, rhiza means root. Okay, myco, the meaning of myco is fungus, rhiza is root. When fungi symbiotically associated with root of plant, it is known as mycorrhiza. Sometimes what happens, just like bacteria gets into the root of a particular plant, that is also called as symbiotic association. Fungus also gets associated with the root of a particular plant. When fungus and root of a plant both are associated, it is known as mycorrhiza. Myco is fungus, rhiza is root. When fungus and root both are associated, it is known as mycorrhiza. Example of mycorrhiza is glomus. Okay, now why this association is needed? Why can't fungi live freely in the soil? Okay, why fungus and root will associate with each other? They have certain benefits. Let's look into the benefits. When there is an association of fungi with root of the plants, what are the benefits? It provides phosphorus to the plants from the soil. Generally, plants find it difficult to uptake phosphorus from the soil. When these plant roots are associated with fungus, and easily phosphorus will be provided to the plants from the soil. Make the plant resistant to root-borne pathogen. Okay, any pathogen entering through the root of the plant will be killed. In such case where there is mycorrhiza or association of fungus with the root. Okay, so the plant will become such plant where there is mycorrhiza or association of fungus with the root. Such plant is always resistant to root-borne pathogen, any pathogen entering through the root. It increases tolerance to salinity and drought. When there is mycorrhiza, in a particular plant, that means if the plant root is associated with fungus, that particular plant will have tolerance to salinity. Salinity, what is salinity? High salt content. Okay, high salt content is known as salinity. Drought is a condition where there is lack of water. Okay, where there is high salinity or salt content, or when there is no water, when there is very less water for the plant, still the plant will be able to tolerate that particular condition if mycorrhiza is present. Okay, so this is the advantage of mycorrhiza. When a plant's root is associated with fungus, the plant will it is easy for the plant to uptake phosphorus from the soil. Plant becomes resistant to root-borne pathogen. Plant becomes tolerant to salinity and drought. The last group of organisms which act as biofertilizers are cyanobacteria. Okay, cyanobacteria you all have studied in your first year class. Examples for cyanobacteria are Anabaena, Nostoc and Oscillatoria. You have studied all these in your first year class. What is the importance of cyanobacteria? They fix atmospheric nitrogen. Okay, that means the nitrogen present in the atmosphere will be converted into ammonia. They add organic matter to the soil. Okay, when there is more organic matter in the soil, the growth of the plant will be very rich. It increases soil fertility. Okay, the soil fertility will be increased by the cyanobacteria. Okay, so they are generally known as blue-green algae, cyanobacteria. They have the capacity to carry out photosynthesis also. Okay, so this is how microorganisms act as biofertilizers. Okay, there are three different types: bacteria, fungi and cyanobacteria. So with this we are ending this chapter. Okay, let's recall all the topics that we have covered in this particular chapter. Okay, so the chapter is microbes in human welfare under the unit biology in human welfare. In this chapter we have studied what are microorganisms, what are the different household products produced by microorganisms like curd, dough, toddy, cheese, and how different industrial products are also produced by microorganisms like fermented beverages, antibiotics, organic acids and alcohol. These organic acids and alcohol are very important to you for your examination. Enzymes, okay, any enzyme could be asked, or they will just give the use and they will ask for the enzymes, okay. And bioactive molecules also, they could be question asking for the uses of this particular biomolecules. Okay, then we studied about sewage treatment. How in sewage treatment, primary treatment or physical treatment, and secondary treatment or biological treatment are done. Okay, we have studied the whole sewage treatment procedure. Okay, here one topic is okay. Let's just finish this off. Okay, and we have studied what is biogas. Okay, how the biogas is produced, what is the structure of a biogas unit, okay, how microorganisms act as biocontrol agent, how microorganisms act as fertilizers. Okay, we have studied all these things. One small topic is left out. Okay, I have already explained this while talking about sewage treatment. Let's look into it again. There is a topic called as biochemical oxygen demand. Generally it is referred as BOD. Okay, biochemical oxygen demand. What is biochemical oxygen demand? BOD refers to the amount of oxygen required to oxidize total organic matter present in 1 liter of water by bacteria. Okay, now you are taking 1 liter water. Just take a polluted water, or let's take sewage water, just 1 liter of it. Okay, now we will add some anaerobic, we will add some aerobic bacteria. Not anaerobic, we will add some aerobic bacteria, just like we have studied in the sewage treatment plant where we studied there will be formation of phlox, association of bacteria and fungi. Okay, now you take 1 liter of sewage, okay, 1 liter of polluted water, you add some aerobic bacteria to it. Okay, now aerobic bacteria will live only in the presence of oxygen, and they need oxygen for all its biochemical reaction or for all its chemical reaction. Now what happens is this sewage water or the polluted water that you have taken, the name itself indicates it's full of pollutants. When I say pollutants, there is no physical pollutant here, there will be organic matter. Okay, you take 1 liter water, sewage water, it will be rich in organic matter. Now you add some aerobic bacteria to it. Now how much oxygen is required by this aerobic bacteria in order to oxidize or break down all the organic matter present in 1 liter water? Hope this is clear to you. You are taking 1 liter sewage water, you are adding some aerobic bacteria. Okay, and this aerobic bacteria will digest all the organic matter present in this water and make it less pollutant. Okay, this aerobic bacteria will work on all the organic matter present in this particular water, sewage, and it will make the water less pollutant. In order to break these organic matter, this aerobic bacteria, for all its reaction, it needs oxygen. Okay, it starts taking the oxygen from the water itself. Okay, so how much oxygen is required by this aerobic bacteria in order to break down, we say oxidize, all the organic matter present in this 1 liter water? That is biochemical oxygen demand. Okay, now we can conclude with this explanation that when there is more organic matter, it indicates there is more pollution. When there is more pollution, we need more oxygen. So when BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, is more, that indicates pollution is also more in that particular water. When BOD is less, it indicates pollution is also less in that particular water. Because why BOD is, when there is less BOD, it indicates pollution is less. That means we are, the aerobic microorganisms are using less oxygen. There is less demand for the oxygen in order to carry up the breakage of this particular pollutant, because there is less pollutant. When there is more pollutant, aerobic microorganisms require more and more oxygen in order to oxidize this particular organic matter. Okay, so BOD refers to the amount of oxygen required to oxidize total organic matter present in 1 liter of water by bacteria. BOD is the measure of the organic matter present in the water. Okay, by calculating BOD, we can calculate the organic matter present in the water. When there is more BOD, it indicates more organic matter. When there is less BOD, it indicates there is less organic matter. So BOD is the measure of the organic matter present in the water. Greater the BOD of the wastewater, more is its polluting potential. It indicates greater the BOD, more is its polluting potential. Lesser the BOD, less is the polluting potential. I hope this is clear to you. How much oxygen is required to oxidize all the organic matter present in 1 liter of water. When we say water, it is not clean water, it is polluted water or sewage. Okay, so that particular BOD can also be calculated for pure water, where the reading for BOD will be very less. When you carry out a BOD, when you calculate BOD for more polluted water, the level of BOD will be very high. So BOD indicates the pollution level of that particular water. Okay, so we are done with the biogas. We are done with how microbes act as biocontrol agent and how microbes act as biofertilizer agent. Now, through the whole chapter we have studied, in the previous chapter of human health and disease, we have seen how microorganisms are harmful to human beings, how they cause, plenty of diseases in human beings. Microorganisms cause, diseases not only in human beings, also in other animals, plants. Okay, so microorganisms are harmful. At the same time, there are certain microorganisms which are useful. Okay, in this whole chapter of microbes in human welfare, we have studied how microorganisms are helpful to human beings. Okay, how they are helpful in producing many household products, industrial products, how they act as biofertilizers, biocontrol agents, how they help in sewage treatment plant, also how they are helpful in biogas production. Okay, with this topic I am ending this chapter. I will be sending you the notes through WhatsApp. Please refer to the notes, and if you have any doubts, you can get back to me. Thank you.